Today we have an Invicta professional diver. I don't know how professional it is, but that's what it's called. I'm not a big fan of Invicta watches only because they're gaudy and tacky and hideous. The good thing about this one is I got it cheap, and it has the Seiko NH35A movement, and that is a hacking movement, automatic, and it can be wound through the stem. We're going to start by taking this apart. We're going to do a complete service on this, break this down part by part, and give you a close-up of what's going on, what's happening here. I'm going to take the back off, the display back. It's already loose, so I'm just winding that off. I'm going to show you how the mechanism works for the auto winder, as well as how does that winder work, how do you get the movement out, stuff like that, everything. Obviously, these are quite abundant in a lot of watches out there, Seiko and otherwise. The first thing I'd like to do is get that winder off, and obviously you got a big, looks like a slotted screw right there, the biggest screwdriver you have that can span that gap is all that's needed to give that wind that right off. Not rocket science. Fairly straightforward, simple, and easy to do. And that lifts right off. Let's see the back side of that. Here's the back side of that winding rotor. Has a gear on it attached to that rotor. And that gear is going to engage this gear right here. And as the rotor moves, this gear has an eccentric underneath with these two pawls connected to it, one here and one there, and they're basically pawls that engage the teeth on here and ratchets that wheel. You can see as I turn it how that mechanism is working. If you look on the lower left, right there is the click. That keeps the mainspring from unwinding. And as I turn this, you can see that clicking. That's why they call it a click. It's clicking. Now if I reverse this, it still winds that mainspring in the right direction. Pretty slick system. Not used to anything like this. Never had one of these apart, so we're going to find out what's doing. Very unique system. So, having never taken one of these apart before, I am not sure how to proceed other than we're just going to wing it. My first thing I'm going to do, we're going to take these two screws out, take this bridge off. That looks like an obvious way to proceed. Let's hope it's right. And if it's not, we're going to find out. Looks like my screwdriver's a little magnetized. I'll have to take care of that later. Okay, one screw. Let's come around this way. Keep in mind, I am not a professional. I just like to tinker and hopefully educate somebody who may be interested. They may be interested just to see how this works, or they're interested in doing the work themselves, learning it, who knows. Okay, I'm going to see about, let's get under that bridge. And that is jeweled. You can see the jewel right there. That will need lubrication. And here are, you can see a better shot of that mechanism, how these two pawls engage and rotate this wheel to wind up the mainspring. Let's see, I have an idea that this might just pop right out. Maybe not. There's a fair amount of pressure on that. I don't know what these are called. Winding pawls. I guess you would call them. I don't know what they're called. I'm just going to give them a little tug to release that pressure so they're not really gripping. There you go. They're not really gripping that wheel anymore. I'm not sure how that's going to come off. But you can see how that's eccentric on there, how that mechanism is moving. I think what we should do first, let's let down the mainspring. Maybe we should have done that first. Okay, by letting down the mainspring, we take a lot of that tension off. I'm going to remove this out of the way, and then, oh boy, that thing just popped right out of there. Look at that. Here's the back side of that wheel that just happened to come out. Maybe a little unorthodox way to do this, but no damage was done. Okay, we have a gear in here as well. I don't know if that's going to come out or not. It doesn't appear to want to come out. I let that mainspring down a little too quick, but I think we're okay. Let's remove the top of this mainspring winder. Put a little stopper in there. Make sure I'm in the shot. I have a small bladed screwdriver to keep that from turning. Okay. Looks like it's got some lubrication on it. That's a good sign. That little shiny stuff in the middle is lubricant. There's our winding gear. To get a better idea on these pawls, what they're doing there. Okay. The winding bridge looks like this part here is a winding bridge. Okay. Not exactly sure what these are going to do here, what their purpose is, or if they'll even come out for me. It looks like that's part of the, okay, there it is. Part of the winding. It's connected to the winding stem. So that would make sense. Okay. That makes perfect sense. This is some kind of tensioner. So it doesn't, it's like a secondary click, I guess we can call that. Let's call it that. A secondary click. Now, since this is not coming off, these aren't coming out. 1, 2, 3 screws here on that bridge should get us access to everything. Let's see how that works. Fairly tight screws for being as small as they are. They are fairly tight. If they're that tight, they're probably good quality metals. Come on, a little more. This is my first go around with one of these, so it should be interesting to see how these compare with Swiss and Russian movements. That bridge should lift off. That whole assembly should just come up. And it does. Okay. Well, let's take a look on the back side of that. There's the mechanisms held in place. There's a screw. Let's get some other tweezers here. Here's a screw holding that plate, which is part of those winding wheels. And let's see if I can get a better shot. See that little C-clip? That's holding in that winding mechanism. That's holding this in. That's why that would not come out. So this could be serviced separately, the way that's sitting. So that's good to know. We have kind of a component there, an assembly. Now the click. Let's refocus, people. That click looks like it's just a straight piece of metal. That it should come out. There it is. Hope everybody saw that. And part of that auto winding bridge holds that on. The main barrel can come out. If anybody missed that, I probably wasn't in the shot. That was sitting in here like that. That's a pretty large barrel. Pretty big mainspring. And if you noticed, it is jeweled at the bottom. That's good. It's a high friction area. Now before we go any further, we're going to get this balance out. And we have some mechanisms here, but we're not going to worry about those just yet. These are still connected to the hands and the rest of the movement. Before we take this out, we have to remove that spring so we can service that jewel and that shock spring. I took a dowel piece of wood. Let's see if I can get a shot of that. There. This is 3/16 OD hardwood, and then I bored out the center and then turned the OD down so it'll fit inside of that, what do you call that? This area right here. So we can rotate that shock spring and then everything will come out. You could probably get away with just using a couple pair of tweezers. Something like this makes things quick. See if I can get in the shot a little better. I'm basically going to put that right on top. If it's not in the shot, it's because my thumbs are in the way. And the wood grips the spring so it can be rotated out of the way. I may have to fine tune this a little bit. So now the spring is turned 90 degrees out of its slot, and then it can be freed. I like to pick it up with a piece of Rotico. Because it is a springy little thing. It's not a good shot, but you get the idea of that spring, where it came from, and then that jewel can be lifted out and its capstone for servicing, and then we can remove the balance. And that should just lift up. Like so. So here's the back side of that, the upside down of the balance assembly. I'll store it like that for now in the tray. Keep everything safe. And I'm doing it this way, taking things apart without taking the movement out yet, because a lot of people want to know, how do you get the stem out of a watch, out of a timepiece? If you look at this mechanism right here, this is engaged. If I pull on that and push on it, you'll see how it moves through these two clicks right over here. There's two, so there's three positions this could be in. This is time setting. This is winding right there. This is date setting, and then time setting. And if you notice, this little piece is moving. Well, when we push it back in, this little part appears right there with a little hole in it, a little dimple. If we push on that, let's get my, if we push on that, you can see how it lifts up. And it doesn't take much. You just want to lift it so just this part right here disengages that stem and you can pull it out. So we're going to push like that and then pull that stem out. And once it's free, I can let go and the stem comes out. There's our stem, winding stem with the crown attached. These gears, they're all captured. They're not going anywhere. When I take this movement out, we're going to put that stem right back in. That'll hold everything in place. Normally, the first thing I would do, take the movement out, put it on a movement holder, and then disassemble everything. I wanted to disassemble this first, so you got an exact idea on how that mechanism works to house that winding stem. And so the only thing left to do would be lift the movement right out of there and remove the hands and start taking everything apart. This is running into 20 minutes, so we'll stop here and we'll continue with another one later.